really fumblings of the Baker administration, from the RMV to COVID, nursing homes, restaurants, so many businesses being affected, not coming back, livelihoods being cut short, and these federal payouts continuing through September here in Massachusetts, and he's gotten a complete pass on all of it. Well, here's somebody that is going to challenge him on those issues and more. Geoff Diehl, former state representative, is now a candidate for governor in Massachusetts on the Republican ticket. Geoff, congratulations on your announcement. Thanks for doing this on behalf of so many Republicans and independents in Massachusetts, and maybe even a few Democrats out there. How are you?
Taylor, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, actually, I was the third highest vote getter in 2018 when I ran against Liz Warren. I know I won some Democrat districts people didn't expect. So, fact of the matter is, though, as you mentioned, this is an important race. It's time to. And by the way, the governor hasn't announced whether he's running or not, so I don't know if there's a primary or not, but it's time to have someone serving in the corner office that understands what it's like to have working folks who are just trying to make a living here. I mean, you have Eric Hines on as a regular guest representing the restaurant industry. He's a friend of mine down here on the South Shore, and he can't get people to come back to work because of the enhanced unemployment. And so that's just one facet of where we're fumbling with the recovery coming out of the pandemic. But there's so much more. And I think, having served in the legislature, I understand, exactly what it's going to take, working with the Democrats, in the House, in the Senate, to make sure that we find some common ground. And I think there's a lot of common ground that we can have because, again, Massachusetts has got to come out of this pandemic stronger than we are. It's we have $5 billion coming from the federal government, through that massive overspending, and the legislature is taking it and not letting the governor spend it where we need it, which is to shore up unemployment insurance. So there's so many areas where I think we can make a difference, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation over the next year during the election cycle. And then if we're fortunate enough to serve, I really think that we have a great chance to get Massachusetts back on track right away.
Well, and $5 million of that $5 billion is being just given away for free with no results that we can see, no tangible results that more people have gotten vaccinated because of that promise.
Is this the Vax Millions? I'm actually I'm vaccinated, and I signed up for the sweepstakes because if I get the money, I'm going to put it right into the campaign. I can tell you that. Right now.
Check with your attorney on that before you do it. So what really spurred you to run? Was it the pandemic, or was this something that's been lingering for a little while?
Well, first of all, when I ran in 2018 against Elizabeth Warren, I made the case that she was really not interested in being a senator for Massachusetts, just from Massachusetts, and not even really from Massachusetts. But, she tried to run for president right after that election. Then she tried to get the VP slot. Then she tried to get a cabinet position. Anything to get out of Massachusetts it feels like with Elizabeth Warren. But we had run a campaign and going around the state talking about how she was ignoring the fishing industry, which I know you're from that region, the South Coast area, and how important it is, the biggest, most valuable fishing port in the United States. All sorts of things. Western Massachusetts needing, internet infrastructure to help, grow businesses and make sure that kids have a better opportunity for education. Just right along the East Coast, again, lobstermen. I mean, there's so many different areas where, and keeping people energy independent, which President Trump had pushed. That was something important for Massachusetts. We had to fight that gas tax indexing in 2014, and then Governor Baker turns around and is trying to force TCI on us, this Transportation Climate Initiative that every New England state that was originally supposed to be in the partnership has said no to. So, I don't know why he hasn't dropped his opposition yet, but that's another, debate point that we're going to have if he does get into this race. So for me, it was a culmination of wanting to continue to work on issues that are important to the people in Massachusetts. And then, my wife and I own a small business. We were shut down indiscriminately, like many other businesses, with ad hoc regulations thrown at us as to when we could reopen. We ended up opening a learning pod for kids who were in these cohorts where they couldn't go back into school. They had to do remote learning, but parents who were fortunate enough to keep their job or at least go back to their job after their furlough couldn't watch their kids or get them online. So we opened a learning pod in my wife's studio on the South Shore here to allow them to get online and get to their classes. And we saw then how uneven education was being delivered to kids coming from different school districts. So, I thought, okay, this is something that we could try to fix down the road. But really, again, I think we're looking at better management for healthcare. I mean, the Holyoke Soldiers Home was terrible. Better management at the RMV. I mean, having all those people whose licenses should have been suspended, including that driver that ended up killing those Marines from the Jarhead Motorcycle Club. Just awful. He should never have had his license. There's so many ways that we can make government more efficient, more responsive, and that's one of the things I know I can do serving in the governor's office.
Are you running under the assumption that Charlie is going to be running? He raised $90,000 just last month. He's resumed fundraising in person, but he has not made any formal announcement. Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito has continued fundraising as well. She has not made any formal announcement. You must be running under the assumption that he's going to throw his hat in.
Well, I mean, he seems to be struggling to make a decision. I mean, at this point, you've got 3 or 4 Democrats who have already thrown their hat in the ring or are about to. Obviously, I'm now entering the race. I mean, I don't think people appreciate the indecision at some point. So, I mean, a year away from primaries and then the general election, I think at some point he's got to decide if this is something he still has the heart for, or if maybe this is his last year and his last term, and maybe we turn the page in a different chapter.
In many ways, he's not unlike this is not unlike the 2018 race with Elizabeth Warren, where she was very wishy-washy on what she was going to be doing. Then she said she wouldn't be running for president, and then she ran for president and kept her seat in the Senate and completely abandoned the people of Massachusetts. I think Charlie Baker was hoping for a cabinet appointment in the Biden administration because they're such lovebirds, and he hasn't gotten it yet.
The only people, I guess, who seem to be really getting any love is, Marty Walsh. He got plucked up and out before the walls came down on his police choice, his police commissioner choice.
Right.
And look, you can't escape your past, and I think with Governor Baker, one of the big things he's going to have to answer if he decides to get into the primary here is why he couldn't support the president. In fact, went so far as to say he should be impeached. He's going to have to explain to a Republican voter base who actually still views Trump pretty favorably here in Massachusetts why he couldn't appreciate what Trump was doing to draw down troops overseas, make us energy independent, put American jobs first, make sure that we have a secure border, so that people are immigrating legally. There was so many countless things that I felt that over the last 4 years were a success. And, I'm going to make sure that we understand where Governor Baker couldn't see eye to eye on any of those issues with the president.
We're speaking with Geoff Diehl, who's thrown his hat in the ring for governor of Massachusetts in the 2022 race. Jeff, we're told that the Republican Party is fractured, that there's no way we can come back, that we're not speaking to one another. I don't really see it as they're painting it. There are a few people out there that they weren't too crazy about Trump, but they went along to get along. But I don't see a great divide in the Republican Party, especially here in Massachusetts. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think if anything, both parties are sort of just having a reassessment of where they stand on things. I mean, Bernie Sanders really opened the door, and Elizabeth Warren and AOC really sort of changed the dynamic in the Democrat Party. They caused, a lot of realignment going on there, and I think you still see that right here in Massachusetts. A lot of these people that are very progressive left Democrats, in fact, there's some members of the legislature that are openly members of the Democrat Socialists of America. So those people are within the ranks of the Democrat Party, and I think that they have their eyes set on primarying out a lot of moderate Democrats. So I think they've got to look at themselves. You just don't hear it in the news as much because in Massachusetts, of course, the press tends to cover mostly Republican politics. But nationally, I think Trump was just a almost like Ronald Reagan, basically a chance to let Republicans who've been in control for so long know that the working Republican wants that voice in the party as well. And I think Jim Lyons, who's taken over as chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party, he served with me in the legislature for 8 years, and I know that his votes in the House with me were always to try to re-empower the individual, and that's where we're going with this. I think the Republican Party wants to recruit more candidates to run and give them a chance to win and serve in the legislature. I think the Mass GOP was used for a long time as sort of a party tool just to support the top of the ticket, whether it be a presidential candidate in one cycle or a governor's candidate in another cycle. And I know when I ran in 2018 against Elizabeth Warren, I got zero help from the Mass GOP. So Jim Lyons took over after that, and I think we're both focused on making sure that party doesn't support top of the ticket candidates, but everybody that wants to run and serve, because that's the farm team that's needed for the future. I ran for the first time in 2010. I was lucky enough to win. Shauna O'Connell came in at that same time, and she was a fighter. She's now mayor of Taunton. If we don't open the doors and let more people who care about their cities, their towns, the state, if we don't let them run and get the support they need, then we're really hurting ourselves. And that's why I think you're going to see really a new day dawning in 2022, which, and by the way, I think it's going to be a great cycle. 2010 was a big year after Democrats had overplayed their hand in 2008, having the House, Senate, and presidency, and forcing Obamacare on the country. Scott Brown was the first sign of pushback, and we went from 16 to 32 House members in 2010 right here in Massachusetts. So I think 2022 is set up to be a very similar cycle with really all the major massive federal spending that's going to cause inflation over the next year or so, thanks to the Biden administration, plus total bungling of foreign policy. And, really, I think, again, Joe Biden, I don't expect great things from him over the next year. Let's put it that way.
We had a call earlier in the show, and this is a concern of mine as well. I've got a young child at home who's going to be maybe attending public school at some point in life. I hope not. I hope we can avoid that at some point. But critical race theory is being endorsed by the largest teachers union in the United States, and certainly it seems like Massachusetts would be one of the first to snatch it up in a statewide curriculum. Ron DeSantis in Florida banned critical race theory from being taught in public schools. Is that something that you would commit to in Massachusetts if you were elected?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, look, when you attempt to rewrite history, especially in a state where we were really the foundation of this country, whether it was the Pilgrims or then the Revolutionary War, if you want to erase that history, you're really erasing most of Massachusetts history along with it, which is completely the wrong way to go. To teach our kids that, they should feel guilty about the sins of the past. Look, every country has a history that they're not always proud of every moment. But if you don't at least teach those moments and allow people to understand in context, you're really setting yourself up to have problems down the road. I mean, right? If you don't remember your history, you're destined to repeat it, right? But beyond that, I think it is tough. The Massachusetts, teachers union, I hope they're not, along with a national program on this, but you see, you're seeing a lot, I think less control at the local level of school boards than it was in the past. And this is sort of a tangent, but it's not. The other thing that's coming nationally is this push to defund police.
Right.
And Northampton has just voted to cut their police funding by half. I really hope that's not a national trend that takes hold in Massachusetts. So whether it's critical race theory or defunding the police, you're going to have a governor out of me that's going to stand up to this and say this is absolutely the wrong direction to go. I will stand with DeSantis on this every day of the week.
Well, what if it's not defunding the police, rather diverting the funds to social workers who respond alongside with officers to the calls?
I hope those social workers have their gun licenses, because I mean, are they going to talk down that group that was heavily armed to the teeth, on over in Wakefield the other day, that militant group that was basically quote unquote training had I guess dozens of guns and no licenses for them. I mean, I don't think a social worker is going to get the same result as a law enforcement officer trained to make sure that they can de-escalate that, if need be. Yeah,
let's keep an eye on the RMV too to see if they process any of those guys correctly.
Yeah, and look, the other thing too is I'm going to divert a little bit from the typical Republican line on this, but immigration, I believe in a secure border, I believe in building the wall. I was down there in Texas, but I also think we need to expedite immigration so that people aren't waiting forever and living in the shadows. And I think we want to get them registered so that they are paying taxes and are contributing members, and they can take jobs above the table. So, you don't always hear Republicans say it, but I do think we need to push so that immigration is processed much more quickly. There's just plenty of of room for people to come to America and become legal citizens. But that's the key word, legal citizens. So let's do that and keep our borders secure at the same time.
Geoff, we've got to run, but one last question. I know that there was a rumor going around that Sheriff Tom Hodgson of Bristol County was considering a gubernatorial run in 2022. Have you had any discussions with him?
I haven't heard that, but that's great to know. I mean, if he decides to get in the fray, I respect Tom a lot, and I certainly think that he would bring a lot to the table as far as discussions. But look, right now, for me, the focus is on getting out there and talking to people. I've got a website, which is geoffdiehl.com. We just posted a video of my kickoff on the 4th of July out in Western Massachusetts that really, I think, explains my platform and what we're all about. We're looking for volunteers, so you can go there and sign up. You can get some nifty hats and stickers and T-shirts and all that. But really, most importantly, I just want to make sure that everybody in Massachusetts knows what I'm about because, after 2018, I had a great chance to meet people in the state. And I think that there's a lot more ahead that if we work together, we can really get people back on track economically and just the individual freedoms that we always have come to expect, I think in America.
What's the website again?
Yeah, geoffdiehl.com. So it's spelled a little bit differently, thanks to my mom. GeoffDiehl. So that's GeoffDiehl.com.
Great. Thanks, Geoff. We'll talk to you soon. 844-500-4242. We'll be right back. I'm Taylor Cormier, and this is The Howie Carr Show.
You're listening to The Howie Carr Radio Network.